Hey there, Jim Johnson for AccentHelp.com here, and I want to talk about a big difference between Boston and New York accents, because oftentimes people get confused between those. One of the big keys for this is something I've already done a video on, which I call Hell's Corner, and it's the distinction between the ah sound and the aw sound, and something that might happen that's kind of in the middle there. So commonly people think of this as the father sound and the thought sound, or instead of father, actually J.C. Wells uses the word palm, P-A-L-M, but most Americans say palm, so we round it a little bit more. So I tend to go with the word father, which a lot of folks do as well. So there's a distinction that usually happens for most Americans, for example, between father and thought, where there is some degree of rounding there. Now, there are some American speakers, especially in the far north of the US, the upper Midwest. You can hear this in our upper Midwest materials. You can hear it where these actually do this sort of a blend. And this is something that's oftentimes called the part of the Great Lakes vowel shift, where it's the cot, C-O-T, caught, C-A-U-G-H-T, caught merger. So that it starts to become more like father, thought, caught. I caught the cot before it fell on the ground. I caught the cot. You will get it where they actually get fully merged. Okay. Now, when we're talking about New York speakers, we get a big difference between these. There tends to be a little bit of rounding that happens on this father, and a lot of rounding that happens on this. Thought. And there's a couple of other words that I want to bring up. Lot and cloth. Because for most Americans, we get a split where lot belongs with father. This is true in New York. Father, lot, cloth, thought. Where you get these really rounded and these much more open, maybe with slight rounding. And this is true of the split that most Americans do. Father, lot, cloth, thought, just not as much rounding. Again, for some speakers in the far northern US, you might get father, lot, cloth, thought. So you can get them actually all merging together. Now, when you get to Boston, you tend to get a subdivision. So instead of the subdivision being here like it is for New York, you actually kind of get your subdivision here instead, like father heads off on its own and goes towards father, losing that sense of rounding that you tend to hear in New York accents, but then rounding mildly with lot, cloth, putting these right together. And for most Boston speakers, I hear them move this to the very same sound. Sometimes it's a hint more rounded, but oftentimes it becomes father, lot, cloth, thought. So these all become identical. Where you hear the big difference is the lot words and the fact that father tends to be so not rounded, as opposed to New Yorkers where it tends to get a little bit of rounding. Father, that's my father. And there's not a lot of true father words, so most of them, notice these are both spelled with O. Almost all the father-like words that are spelled with an O, those are the ones that get the rounding. And there's the same subdivision here. Now this is spelled O, but it's O-U, okay? So if it's spelled with just an O, it goes there. Okay, that's as predictable as it gets. But these are the words, save this one, that again, J.C. Wells tends to use P-A-L-M for, that are the lexical set words that he uses to subdivide these, and they divide in different ways in different accents. It's good for you to look at the Hell's Corner clip. The confusion that I just brought up here is part of why I call it Hell's Corner, because it's a little bit of a nightmare. In the same way that some people that I work with have coined the R being Hell's consonant, because there are so many complexities that can happen with the R as well. But that's the big distinction between Boston and New York accents. And now, if you're from one of those places, proceed to complain significantly in the comments below. But really, That is probably the biggest distinction between them, other than the amount of hate that will happen in the comments below. No, that's probably, you guys are identical in that maybe. There you go. For other info about learning accents for actors, you can check out the website accenthelp.com.